In this lesson, we're going to take our exercise 1 practice to the next level. In the last video, you learned how to visualize the unbroken chain of half steps in any region on your guitar neck, and you learned how to connect these notes together in your mind using the cloud concept. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to open this concept up, and we're going to learn to apply it in a slightly more abstract way that allows us to move freely all over the neck of the guitar. And this is an exercise that I call mobility. So please watch this explanation of how the mobility concept works, and then I'll get out the guitar and I'll demonstrate how we practice this exercise. In the last video, you learned the cloud exercise, which enabled you to visualize and play all of the notes of our musical system in their natural consecutive order anywhere on the neck of your guitar where your left hand might happen to be located. Today, what we're going to do is take this concept one step further, and we're going to take a closer look at exactly what happens at the border between each pair of strings. And we're going to make a key observation that's going to enable us to open this concept up and move with complete freedom all over the neck of the guitar. So to begin, I want you to focus your attention on this note right here, note 5, and the note 1/2 step above it, which is note 6 on the next string. Now when you were practicing cloud, this was just one more step of your journey, but in the mobility exercise, this is really where all the action takes place. Because now the only thing we're really interested in is understanding how do we move from one string to the next by the interval of a 1/2 step. So what we can do is actually move beyond the cloud concept, and we can even stop visualizing the entire cloud. And in fact, we can even stop thinking of these notes as notes 5 and 6 and just simply think of them as two different notes that are separated by a 1/2 step between these two strings on your guitar. And so what I want you to take away from this is that this is what the 1/2 step looks like between these two strings on your guitar. And I would encourage you to think about it exactly that way. I want you to repeat this concept to yourself in your mind, that this is what the 1/2 step looks like between these two strings on my guitar. It corresponds to that awkward stretch between your pinky finger in the stretched position and your index finger on the next string. Okay? But let's look at how we'd actually play this. Let's say you're playing this note and you've got your hand aligned so that you're playing it with your pinky and you want to move up a 1/2 step. But let's say you don't want to move up any higher on this string. What you want to do is move to the next string. Where are we going to find the note that's 1/2 step above this one on the next string? Well, what we learned from cloud is that we can simply slide our hand down 1 fret so that the note we just played corresponds to that awkward pinky stretch, and then we're going to have the note we're looking for directly under our index finger on the next string. And what I want you to realize about this is that there's actually no stretching involved. It's purely a visualization technique. If we're here playing this note with our pinky, literally all we're going to do is slide down 1 fret, and we've got the note we're looking for directly under our index finger. So it's actually not a stretch. It's simply a change of position. And the only reason I had you practice the cloud exercise and practice that pinky stretch was to help you remember when this change of position is going to be required. And the same movement works in reverse. Let's say you're playing this note here with your index finger and you want to move down a 1/2 step. And let's say again, you don't want to move down any lower on this string. What you want to do is pass to the lowest string. Okay? What you're going to do is the exact same movement in reverse. You're going to slide your hand up exactly 1 fret, and now you've got the note you're looking for directly under your pinky finger. So again, the key is just knowing what the 1/2 step looks like between any pair of strings on your guitar. And that's what we're going to look at for the rest of the strings right now. If we go back to the cloud exercise and we look at the next pair of strings and the notes 10 and 11, you can see that you've got the exact same relationship here. So moving back and forth between these two notes is also going to require that change of a position by exactly 1 fret. If we go back to the drawing, we can see that we have the same relationship between notes 15 and 16, or what we could say is that, again, this is what the 1/2 step looks like between this pair of strings as well, and it's going to require that change of position by exactly 1 fret. And as you can probably imagine, the story changes here when we get to this special zone between the 2nd and 3rd strings. If you look at the notes 19 and 20, you can see that here there's never going to be any reason to stretch, and we'll never have to change position because you've got both of these notes directly under the fingers of your left hand already. Okay? So here the 1/2 step looks different on your guitar. And one way to remember it is that between the 2nd and 3rd strings, the 1/2 step is what your hand naturally gives you. And again, I would encourage you to kind of use this as a memory aid as you're getting used to these movements, and say this to yourself. Repeat this concept to yourself in your mind, that between the second and third strings on my guitar, the half step is what my hand naturally gives me, just alternating between the pinky and the index finger. It's all the other strings that require you to change position by exactly 1 fret, because the note you're looking for is always just beyond your reach. It's always just 1 fret farther than you can reach, and so you need to change position to get there. But here, between the second and third strings, the half step is what your hand naturally gives you. So let's finish up by going back to the cloud drawing and checking out what happens between the highest 2 strings, notes 24 and 25. And here you can see that you've got the same situation you had earlier, and to move between these 2 notes, we're going to have to change position by exactly 1 fret. And so the learning here is just that the highest 2 strings on the guitar are normal strings again, okay, just like all of the lower strings on your guitar. The only place on the guitar where all of these musical shapes are slightly altered is at the border between strings 2 and 3. Okay, and so the first interval that we're looking at is the half step, and we can already see that the half step is slightly different between strings 2 and 3 from the way it appears anywhere else on the guitar. So now what I want to demonstrate for you on the guitar is not only how to practice this concept, but more importantly, how to integrate it with your freedom of movement in the other dimension, which is moving up or down any individual string by the individual frets on that string. And by combining these 2 types of movement, we can open up the entire neck of the guitar and move freely all over the guitar by half steps. As you begin to practice mobility, there are 2 things that I want you to really concentrate on at this level in your exercise 1 practice. And the first is your clarity of vision. You need to make absolutely certain that you really understand these mobility jumps and that you know what the half step looks like between any pair of strings on your guitar. And this is very analytical, it's very left brain, and I need you to be very strict with yourself in the beginning about making sure that you can see these mobility jumps clearly and that you continue to see them clearly as you're playing. So the way that we build this confidence is to play in a way that's very thoughtful, very deliberate. We want to give our full attention to each note that we play, and we want to make sure our left hand is always in a proper posture of 1 finger per fret. So as I'm moving through the musical landscape, moving up the notes on this string, when I get here and I'm ready to make that mobility jump to the next string, what I need to do is ask myself the question, what does the half step look like between these 2 strings? Well, I'm in the normal string. So the half step is what I get when I go from my pinky finger to my index finger after shifting down a fret. And if I've got my hand in this posture where I'm controlling this entire region by, keeping my fingers perfectly aligned, 1 finger per fret, what that allows me to do is after playing this note, I could bet my life that when I slide down a fret and I grab that note with my index finger, it's going to give me exactly the sound that I'm expecting. And I want to have that kind of intensity about it. I want to be that sure before each movement that I make. And really the key to everything is just always keeping your hand in this kind of perfectly aligned posture of 1 finger per fret, because that's what allows you to make very controlled movements, and each movement that you make actually reinforces your confidence and your clarity of vision about where all these notes are actually located on the neck of your guitar. The second thing that I want you to explore through the mobility exercise is your own freedom of movement. And this is a little more advanced, so if you've got your hands full with what you've learned until now, you might want to just stop the video and practice for a couple days and just come back to this concept whenever you're ready for it. But what I mean is simply the freedom to choose one path or another. We're not looking necessarily to play the notes in the most economical way possible or use the fingering that seems the most obvious or the most logical. What we're really trying to do right now is to build that vehicle. We're trying to build our own ability to move freely all over the neck of the guitar. And so the way we do that is to simply incorporate changes of position whenever we feel like it. So for example, going back to the example before, as I was moving up the notes on this string, once I got here, the most logical or obvious thing was to make that mobility jump to the next string. But I don't have to. I could also just slide up this string, take advantage of this moment to change my position. And now I've gotten up higher on the guitar neck. Maybe now I make that mobility jump. Maybe now I slide up a position again, and I grab that note with my index finger. Maybe I just make a small change of position, mobility jump, and small change of position. And so I'm still striving to keep my hand nicely aligned with one finger per fret the whole time, but I'm changing position whenever I feel like it. And it's actually that discipline of keeping my hand aligned one finger per fret and getting that clarity of vision that we were talking about earlier that allows me to make these changes of position very easily. And that's really the thing that gives me the confidence to blaze these new trails and to move all over the neck of the guitar very freely. And so that's what you want to explore as you're practicing mobility.